After nearly 20 years of mostly working within the Breaking Bad universe, Vince Gilligan has finally returned to his sci-fi roots with another new and original show with Pluribus. It only took about 30 seconds for me to fall in love with it, and there's something comforting in how the show forges its own identity while still feeling like a continuation of the Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul style. Of course, the story is quite different, it's an entirely different genre, but it feels similar, almost like Pluribus is the next chapter in an anthology where the stories are connected, not by plot, but by something less tangible. The scenes that go on way longer than they would in any other show, or whenever you see the camera placed in a weird, interesting spot. A lot of it comes down to pacing, and it's something I talked about in relation to Better Call Saul a few years ago in my Importance of Detail video, but seeing how Pluribus uses a lot of the same technique for its own ends made me want to revisit the analysis. Spoilers ahead for Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and roughly the first 4 episodes of Pluribus. In terms of pacing and attention to detail, or frankly, longer than you'd expect scenes, the go-to example for Better Call Saul is Season 3, Episode 1, Mabel, where we spend about 5 minutes watching Mike systematically take his car apart in search of a tracking device. Not 15 minutes, as I said in my original video. I can finally correct the record on that. And there are so many other examples. Season 1, Episode 8, Rico has a sequence of Jimmy digging through a dumpster looking for evidence. There's Nacho practicing dropping a pill case into a coat pocket over and over. Now to Pluribus, Episode 2 starts with a 3-minute sequence of Zosha helping to clean up bodies left by the joining, followed by another 4.5 minutes of her getting on a plane and taking off. Once we revisit her, there's another 2 minutes of her landing, bathing, and finally showing up at Carol's house. More recently, Episode 4 features 10 minutes of a day in the life of Manousos, checking radio frequencies, licking cans, eating dog food, all so we can get to the phone call we've already seen, where Carol curses him out. So what's the point of these lengthy scenes that could easily be cut in half, montaged over, or in some cases, left out entirely? Zosha, for example, could have just shown up at Carol's place. What's the point of the nearly 10 minutes of backstory on the logistics of getting there? Part of it is novelty. Vince Gilligan recently told Ringer TV something he learned from reading Stephen King's memoir On Writing.
I learned a lot from reading that very slim book about how he went about writing. And one of the things that always stuck with me from his book was he said, people love process. Mm-hmm. People love watching other people do their jobs, especially if it's a job you yourself are not familiar with. And especially if that person is actually good at their job.
It takes only seconds on YouTube to see this is true. In my Importance of Detail video, I used the example of the Primitive Technology channel. At the time, it had 10 million subscribers. Now it's up to 11 million. People love watching someone meticulously build things. The Zosha example is a good one. We didn't have to see her transportation from Morocco. She could have just strolled into Carol's yard. But watching her journey invites us to see something unusual. What does transportation look like in a utopia, where every human is the best pilot in the world and they can coordinate with perfect efficiency, communicating telepathically, or more accurately, not communicating at all? Because when you think as one, when all human bodies are effectively appendages of one singular being, no communication is necessary. I don't talk to my hand and tell it to type these words, it just does. When Zosha needs a scooter, it's there before she turns around. And as she takes the wheel, its previous rider takes over for her in disposing of bodies left by the global joining. 90 million Primitive Technology viewers didn't know how to build a tiled roof hut from raw materials, so it was fun to watch an expert. Similarly, most of us have no idea how a hive mind picks a female Raban lookalike from the world's population and gets her to Carol's yard efficiently. So it's fun to watch. And it doubles as world building, telling us about the new status quo, teaching us a little about how the hive mind works. This is one of the few glimpses we get of them with no old schoolers around. The name Gilligan and company use behind the scenes to refer to the unjoined. Also, by getting outside New Mexico in the cold open, the show gives us a better sense of the hive mind's global reach. TV often skips the details and the logistics, so there's satisfaction satisfaction in getting to watch it play out. Like you're seeing something you shouldn't. But not only that, part of storytelling is placing us in the shoes of its characters. Of course, that can never be fully accomplished, at least not until VR can plug directly into our brains, but in the best stories, we generally feel a degree of what the characters feel, and part of their experience is the passage of time. The passage of time can be conveyed through montage and other means, but on TV, with the luxury of multiple episodes and seasons, the passage of time can also be conveyed with the passage of time. Spending 8 minutes at the start of the episode with Zosha disposing of bodies, getting on a plane, and then another 2 arriving at the airport, bathing and changing, we feel the investment of time and effort. We feel the hive bending over backwards to please Carol. It's one thing for food, supplies, or in this case, a pirate lady to just show up at her door. It's another to at least this one time see how it gets there. So in the stew of emotions, one thing you feel is that the hive mind is really trying. And whatever small slice of the world Carol sees, there's so much more going on behind the scenes. Similarly, in the opening to episode 4 with Minusos, when the hive delivers him a fresh meal, there's a moment of anguish on his face before he rejects it, out of paranoia. Could it be poisoned? Could there be something in there that'll turn him into one of them? Before this moment, he heard flies in the trash, indicating there's some residue left in a discarded can. So, in his desperation, he retrieves the can and licks it.
It was not trash.
Was it in the trash?
Yes.
Then it was trash.
The moment doesn't progress the overall story in any meaningful way, but it places us in the passenger seat next to Minusos. It forces us to live with his desperation, so we can better feel his frustration minutes later, turning down that food. By the time we reach Carol's phone call at just under 10 minutes, we've also seen him eat dog food and lived with his paranoid solitude long enough for Carol's call to land with sincere impact.
Chinga tu madre, cabrón!
Love her delivery, and after close to 10 minutes of virtual silence, it represents a disruption, a signal of hope that he is not alone, because the hive would never talk to him that way. The score gets more hopeful, and you feel it. That's why we needed close to 10 minutes of quote-unquote nothing happening. For her call to be a disruption, there had to be something for it to disrupt. So rather than a 60-second montage of a guy starving at a self-storage facility, we live with it long enough for Carol's call to mean something, for us to feel a degree of what Minusos must be feeling. Another way to phrase it is that we don't get the luxury of skipping ahead, especially in difficult situations. In the first episode, when Helen collapses, from there, things almost happen in real time. This is one of the worst moments of Carol's life, and we don't get to skip ahead. We are with her in the desperation of trying to save Helen's life, the logistics of moving her body with the help of a sandwich board, and feeling the grief while trying to get home in the midst of the joining. Compare it to movies or shows where they find the body and skip to the funeral. Or a recent egregious example, partially due to behind-the-scenes issues, reshoots, etc., but still, Daredevil Born Again. An important character dies in the first episode, and we skip ahead a year. I found that so frustrating because it does give us a luxury Matt Murdock doesn't have, skipping the hardest time in his life. Why does that matter? Because the same way you can only feel the speed of a car when it accelerates or decelerates, stories have an impact when the mood changes. Carol's call to Minusos inspires hope, and you feel it because before that you felt hopelessness. Later in episode 4, I felt another surge of hope when Carol busted out her whiteboard and started writing what she knows about them. If she were a typical hero, ready to fight the hive and free humanity from day one, that moment wouldn't have meant a thing. It would have been as expected and uneventful as Superman donning tights the moment Luthor tosses Lois off a building. But the whiteboard moment came after episode 3, nearly a full episode of Carol binging Golden Girls, waiting out the end of times that she knows is coming, because the hive has promised, sooner or later, they will find a way to convert her. We lived in that state of resignation and inactivity long enough so that when she becomes proactive, when the Carol car accelerates, We feel it. The shift in mood towards something more positive. The same later in the episode when Zosha's non-answer to the question, can all this be reversed, tells Carol everything she needs to know. Yes, it can.
Do I seem troubled? This is me happy. I mean, congratulations, you did it.
Of course, it is a delicate balance. This deliberate pacing, you thought I'd say slow, didn't you? It risks boredom. That's partly alleviated when we're watching Process, like Mike disassembling the car, and it comes with that primitive technology-esque satisfaction of watching an expert at work. Or in the Golden Girls episode of Pluribus, watching the Hive restock Carol's sprouts. What also helps is humor, like one of my favorites in that same episode when they try to deliver food because Carol is running low, and they list the contents of her fridge, including half a carton of oat milk, which leads to this moment.
Shows what you know, fuckers. It's 3/4 of a carton.
Or in episode 4, the extended sequence of Carol acquiring, then testing her truth serum. The exchange about heroin is one of the funniest of the series so far.
Oh, might we suggest snorting the heroin instead? It's been quite a number of years since you've injected.
Nope, in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm gonna Sid Vicious this shit like it's the Chelsea fucking hotel.
And my other favorite, when she's watching herself high on TV and agreeing with herself.
How annoying is that chick? Very.
Another Vince Gilligan staple, making the show visually interesting. From that same interview with Ringer TV,
I got this kind of philosophy. I like to not reuse shots.
As a result, you see a lot of creativity in camera placement and maneuvering. The overhead shot in the airplane bathroom, emphasizing Carol's isolation. The moment where the camera is pointed at the window, so we see the look of grief on Carol's face, next to her wife's grave in the backyard, reflected on the window next to her. Golden Girls reflected on the back of a DVD propped up on the coffee table, again showing us Carol and what she's looking at all on the same screen with the help of reflections. A motif that continues with the cloche, apparently what you call the thing you put over food to keep it warm, often seen with room service. Or at the start of the episode, the aurora borealis reflected in Carol's eyes. Actually, the entire sequence is visually interesting since it takes place in the unusual setting of an ice hotel. If the show has its hooks in you, like it does me, then even these lengthier sequences will hold your attention out of sheer curiosity. When we met Manousos for the first time, I wanted to know everything about him. He might be the only potential ally Carol has left on the planet. So, what is he like? How is he surviving? Why is he so much more isolated than her? It would take a lot to bore me, and it's more art than science knowing how long is too long and how long is just right. But to help keep us engaged, in addition to our already established investment in the story, are those other components. The satisfaction of watching Process, the humor and any other striking emotions, like the moment of grief watching Carol let loose in the recording.
I miss you.
These choices make the show more engaging, which is especially important with the often deliberate pacing, and if we can accept that, then the big moments land hard, like the climax to episode 4. That sequence came after the episode dedicated about 25% of the runtime to Carol acquiring and testing truth serum, more process and logistics leading to a major shift in mood. For the first time, we see something from the Hive other than serenity or anger-induced convulsions. Now sadness and pleading. And when they first surround her, they feel like a threat, when until now, they've generally felt harmless, maybe with the exception of the first time Carol met them. This emphasis on details, specifically not skipping the details, is a huge part of Vince Gilligan and Company's signature style, and it's so important because it better connects us with the characters to better earn their emotional highs and lows. The details also add to the sense of realism. When Carol got Helen's body home, she could have taken out a shovel, cut to the sun going down and her patting the dirt. Done and done. Instead, burying the body is a lengthy process. It'll require a pickaxe thanks to the volcanic rock in the soil, and as the day progresses, flies attack the corpse. There's realism in the accuracy of the world they're portraying and in its dangers. Because we don't skip any steps, we know Carol's not going to find some easy miracle way out, and there's no Deus Ex Machina coming to save the day. If she finds a way to fix the world, or accept that it doesn't need fixing, we'll be with her every step of the way. That sense of realism and the claustrophobia that we're trapped in the moment with these characters with no easy way out means the tension, whenever it's there, is amplified in that special Vince Gilligan way. There are other ingredients in the Gilligan style, aside from the pacing. There are also the rich, imperfect characters, and the fact that Gilligan and team let those characters lead the story, rather than imposing story onto them. Here's what he told Filmmaker magazine in 2014. "It seems to me that TV at its best is a living, breathing thing. It's organic. And if you're organic in your storytelling, which means letting your characters tell you where they need to go, instead of trying to force them into directions that they don't want to take, if you can maintain that organic form of plot evolution, then that will always hold you in good stead. If you're honest with your characters, if you let them behave as human beings would, then you'll never stray too far from the right path." That's how Howard Hamlin, initially devised as the bad guy, became something more ambiguous. And Chuck, Jimmy's brother, originally intended as a Mycroft Holmes, Sherlock's older brother kind of character, emotionally damaged but supportive, became something else entirely. Character first can take your story in surprising and unexpected directions, even for the writers. But it's part of what makes the characters feel fleshed out, real, and complex, and furthers that sense of a story earned rather than forced. There are no twists and surprises imposed for their own sake. They are always there as organic steps in the story born from the choices of characters that feel real. A lot of these choices, the pacing, camera placement, the way they treat characters in the story, a lot of that comes from the group of people involved. It's an oversimplification to call all of this Gilligan style. It is his leadership and vision, but Pluribus also brings back a lot of partners and staff from Saul and Breaking Bad before that. Paul Donahue and Marshall Adams both return as cinematographers from Better Call Saul and El Camino, ensuring continuity in the visual style. There's also Chris McCaleb and Skip McDonald, who both worked on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, composer Dave Porter, who worked on both series, plus several writers and directors from Saul make their return. Gordon Smith, Alison Tatlock, Ariel Levine, and this one guy, Vince Gilligan. And of course, front and center is Ray Seahorn, who played one of the best original characters to come from the entire Bad and Saw universe, Kim Wexler. I feel like I'm giving an Oscar speech now, like I have to remember everyone to thank. Anyway, I'm sure there are others I've missed. If you're listening and feel left out, leave a comment. My people will talk to your people and we'll sort this out. By the way, it isn't just Gilligan who got the gang back together. Gil did too, Gil being me and the gang being my brothers. We did a podcast about Better Call Saul while that show was airing, and now we're back with the podcast Pluribus for the rest of us. We stream right here on this channel Thursday nights around 10 p.m. Eastern, right after new episodes of Pluribus drop on Apple TV. We give our immediate reactions to the episode, then we stream again a few days later with a full recap and analysis, once we've had a few days to think it over and rewatch the episode. If you want to catch up on the streams, they're published afterward on the podcast channel, link in the pinned comment, or find us by searching for Pluribus for the rest of us on any podcast app. With that, thank you for watching, and see you on the next One Take.